what happens when two of television's most beloved personalities collide in a way no one saw coming. What began as a routine interview on the Kelly Clarkson Show turned into one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime TV history. One that ended with Trevor Noah walking off set in visible frustration. But the real story isn't just about the dramatic exit. It's about the tense conversation that led up to it, and how a simple question about comedy spiraled into a clash of ideals neither host nor guest was prepared for. From the moment Trevor Noah stepped onto Kelly Clarkson's brightly lit stage, something felt off. The normally warm, lively atmosphere seemed subdued. The studio lights felt harsher, and the energy in the room lacked its usual spark. Kelly, radiant in her signature colorful blazer, greeted Trevor with her trademark enthusiasm. "Welcome back to the show, Trevor. It's so great to have you here again." Trevor smiled politely, replying, "Thanks for having me, Kelly. Always a pleasure." The interview began smoothly, with friendly chatter about Trevor's latest projects and his post-Daily Show career. Everything seemed normal, until Kelly decided to ask the question that would change everything. "So, Trevor," she began, leaning forward, "do you ever feel like comedy has become too political these days? Sometimes I wonder if we're losing the pure joy of just making people laugh." Her words hung in the air for a beat. Trevor's easy smile faded into something more contemplative. "That's an interesting question, Kelly," he said carefully. "What do you mean by too political?" Kelly gestured animatedly, trying to explain. "It just seems like every comedian now has an agenda. They can't just tell jokes anymore without making some big statement about society. Don't you miss when comedy was just about making people happy?" Trevor shifted slightly in his seat, his jaw tightening. "I think that's a bit of a misconception," he said. "Comedy has always been political. From the jesters in medieval times to Charlie Chaplin, Richard Pryor, George Carlin, they all used humor to address serious issues." Kelly nodded, but her tone suggested disagreement. "Sure, but don't you think there's a difference between that and what we see today? Some comedians seem more interested in lecturing people than entertaining them." Trevor's expression sharpened. "Who are you referring to specifically?" he asked. Kelly laughed lightly, her tone forced. "Oh, I'm not naming names. I just think audiences want to escape. They want to laugh and forget their problems for a while." Trevor leaned forward, his voice calm but edged. "With respect, Kelly, I think you're oversimplifying what comedy is and what it can do. When I was growing up in South Africa during apartheid, comedy wasn't just entertainment. It was survival. It helped people process trauma and find hope in impossible situations." Kelly waved her hand dismissively. "But that's different. That was a completely different situation. Here in America, people just want to be entertained." The audience stirred uneasily, divided, some nodding in agreement with Kelly, others clearly backing Trevor. The tension was thick now, visible in their body language. Trevor's tone hardened. "Are you suggesting America doesn't have serious issues worth discussing through comedy? That racism, inequality, political corruption, these aren't things comedians should address?" Kelly's voice rose defensively. "I'm not saying they can't talk about those things. I'm saying not every joke has to be about them. What happened to observational comedy? What happened to just being funny?" "It still exists," Trevor replied, his patience thinning. "But you seem to be implying that political comedy isn't legitimate. And that's not just wrong, it's dangerous." Kelly frowned, her irritation showing. "Dangerous? That's a bit dramatic, don't you think?" Trevor didn't back down. "No, not at all. When you dismiss political comedy as less valid, you're saying comedians shouldn't use their platforms to highlight injustice. You're saying entertainment should exist in a vacuum, separate from the real world." The air in the studio grew heavy. Kelly's smile faltered. Trevor's tone turned sharper, and the audience sat frozen, watching as an ordinary daytime interview unraveled into a raw, unscripted confrontation about the purpose of comedy itself. The tension in the studio had reached a breaking point. Crew members exchanged uneasy glances while the once lively audience sat in utter silence, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. Kelly Clarkson leaned back in her chair, frustration flickering across her face. "Look, Trevor," she said, trying to steady her tone, "I'm not trying to attack anyone. I'm just saying that maybe, just maybe, people want to watch something without constantly being reminded of how terrible everything is." Trevor Noah's voice remained calm, but carried an unmistakable intensity. And I'm saying that assuming audiences can't handle truth mixed with humor is insulting, he replied. It's also a luxury not everyone can afford. A luxury? Kelly repeated sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Trevor paused, visibly debating how far to take it. Kelly, he began carefully, you've had an incredibly successful career in music and television. You've been celebrated, loved, and supported by millions. You have the luxury of believing entertainment should always be light and fun, because your life experiences have, for the most part, been positive. Not everyone has that luxury. Kelly's expression hardened. Are you seriously suggesting I don't understand struggle? That I haven't faced challenges? I'm not diminishing your struggles, Trevor said, raising his hand slightly. But I am saying your perspective on what comedy should be might come from a position of privilege. The word privilege hit Kelly like a slap. She straightened in her chair, her composure strained though she tried to maintain her smile. Privilege? She repeated, her voice trembling with anger. You want to talk about privilege? You've made millions of dollars making jokes about America, while being from another country entirely. Don't lecture me about privilege. The audience gasped audibly. A line had been crossed and everyone knew it. Trevor's expression turned to stone, all trace of warmth gone. The silence that followed was suffocating. Kelly seemed to realize instantly that she had said something she couldn't take back. Excuse me? Trevor said finally, his voice low and sharp. What exactly are you implying, Kelly? Kelly shifted uncomfortably, her media training taking over as she tried to backtrack. I didn't mean it like that. I just meant we all have different perspectives based on our experiences. No, Trevor interrupted firmly. You said I made millions making jokes about America while being from another country, as if that somehow disqualifies my perspective. As if being an immigrant means I have less right to comment on American society. The studio was deathly silent except for the quiet hum of the cameras. Even the crew had stopped moving. Kelly swallowed hard. Trevor, I think you're misinterpreting what I said. Am I? Trevor replied, his tone controlled but burning with conviction. Because it sounded like you just did the classic thing, questioning someone's legitimacy based on where they were born. It sounded like you just told me to go back where I came from, only dressed up politely. Kelly's face went pale. That's not what I meant at all, she stammered. You're putting words in my mouth. Then explain what you did mean, Trevor challenged. Because I've heard that argument before, from people who dismiss anything I say about America because I wasn't born here. So go ahead, enlighten me. Kelly glanced around the studio, clearly panicked, searching for help that wasn't coming. The air was heavy, no one daring to move. Finally, she said weakly, I just think sometimes outsiders have a different perspective that might not fully capture the American experience. Trevor let out a bitter laugh. The American experience, Kelly? I became an American citizen. I've lived here for years. I pay taxes, I contribute to this society. I've built my career here. But according to you, I'm still just an outsider making jokes about your country? I didn't say that, Kelly protested, but her voice lacked conviction. You didn't have to, Trevor replied coldly. It was in your tone, in your words. You said I made millions making jokes about America while being from another country, as if that's wrong or illegitimate. Kelly forced a strained smile, clearly desperate to diffuse the situation. Look, can we just agree that we have different perspectives and move on? I think we're both getting a little too heated here. Trevor shook his head slowly. No, Kelly, we can't just move on, because what you just did proves exactly the point I was making. You dismissed my right to comment on this society because of where I was born, and now you want to sweep it under the rug like it didn't happen. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the air in the room seemed to tighten, as everyone realized the interview had gone far beyond recovery. Kelly tried to steady her tone, her frustration beginning to show. I'm not dismissing anything, she said. I'm trying to have a civilized conversation here. Trevor's eyebrows shot up. Civilized? You think questioning someone's legitimacy based on their birthplace is civilized? You think telling someone they don't have the right to critique the country they've chosen to call home is civilized? Kelly's composure cracked. I never said you don't have the right to anything. You're twisting everything I'm saying. Trevor leaned forward, his voice sharp. Then maybe you should think more carefully about what you're saying, because words have meaning. And when you suggest that my perspective is less valid because I wasn't born here, that has meaning. The audience shifted uncomfortably, whispers rippling through the studio. What had begun as a discussion about comedy had turned into something far more personal. Kelly, flustered, tried to regain control. You know what, Trevor? Maybe the problem isn't where you're from. Maybe the problem is that you're so defensive you can't handle any criticism without playing the victim card. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Trevor's expression hardened from shock to fury. The victim card? He repeated incredulously. Kelly, you just questioned my right to comment on American society because I'm an immigrant, and when I call you out on it, you accuse me of playing the victim card? I think you're being overly sensitive, Kelly said, her voice tight, doubling down as the studio collectively winced. Trevor abruptly stood, his chair scraping loudly. Overly sensitive? Let me tell you something about sensitivity. Kelly, when you grow up as a mixed-race child in apartheid South Africa, when your very existence is illegal, when you have to hide from your own government, you learn what real sensitivity is. When you come to America and work your way up from nothing, only to have someone question your legitimacy because of where you were born, that's not sensitivity. That's reality. Kelly remained seated, her posture defensive. I never questioned your legitimacy as a person, Trevor. Don't put words in my mouth. Trevor shot back immediately. You questioned my legitimacy as a commentator on American society. You suggested that being from another country somehow makes my perspective less valuable. How is that different? Kelly hesitated, searching for footing. Because commentary and personhood are two different things, she said weakly. Trevor laughed, a cold, humorless sound. Are they? Commentary comes from personhood. My experiences, both in South Africa and America, shape my comedy. You can't separate the two. When you attack my commentary based on my birthplace, you're attacking who I am. Kelly's voice softened, trying to calm the rising tension. I think we're both getting too personal here. Maybe we should take a breath and remember we're on television. Trevor's eyes flashed. Oh, now you're concerned about being on television? Where was that concern when you questioned my legitimacy? When you accused me of playing the victim card? The harsh studio lights made every emotion visible. Anger, discomfort, disbelief. Trevor, I respect you, Kelly said finally, struggling to sound composed. I respect you as a comedian and as a person. We just have different views on what comedy should be, and that's okay. Can we agree to disagree and move forward? Trevor paused, then replied evenly, Kelly, this was never just about comedy. The moment you brought my birthplace into it, the moment you implied my perspective was less valid because I'm an immigrant, it became something much bigger. Kelly's voice faltered. I really don't think that's what happened here. Trevor's tone hardened. Then you're not listening. If you can't understand why questioning someone's legitimacy based on where they were born is a problem, then we have nothing more to discuss. Kelly's frustration returned. So what, we can't have different opinions now? Trevor shook his head. Having different opinions is one thing. Using someone's immigration status to dismiss their perspective is something else entirely. And the fact that you can't see the difference tells me everything I need to know. The weight of his words filled the room. Kelly sat frozen, realizing too late how far things had gone. I think you came here looking for a fight, she said defensively. The accusation ignited the moment again. Trevor's eyes widened. I came looking for a fight? Kelly, you asked me about political comedy. You dismissed it, questioned my right to do it because I'm an immigrant, and now you're saying I came looking for a fight? Kelly's voice trembled slightly. You could have just answered my questions without getting so confrontational. Trevor took a slow step back, his disappointment visible. Confrontational? Let me ask you something, Kelly. If I'd been born in Iowa instead of Johannesburg, would you have questioned my right to make political commentary about America? Kelly hesitated just long enough to make her silence an answer. That's not a fair question, she murmured. Trevor's reply was firm. It's the fairest question there is, because your answer tells everyone what this is really about. So I'll ask again. If I were born in America, would you have questioned my legitimacy as a political comedian? The silence was deafening. Kelly avoided his gaze, her confidence fading. I think you're trying to trap me with that question, she finally said. Trevor's voice was calm but heavy with disappointment. The only trap here is the one you set for yourself, because we both know the answer. If I'd been born here, you'd never have questioned my right to comment on American politics through comedy. You might have disagreed with me, but you wouldn't have attacked my legitimacy. Kelly finally looked directly at Trevor, her voice trembling with anger. You're putting words in my mouth again. Trevor's response was calm but cutting. No, Kelly, I'm holding up a mirror and I don't think you like what you're seeing. The studio fell utterly silent. A few audience members covered their mouths in disbelief. What had begun as an uncomfortable exchange had now turned into something painful to witness. Realizing she was losing control of the moment, Kelly tried to reclaim authority. You know what, Trevor? I've been nothing but gracious to you. I invited you on my show, I've always been respectful. And this is how you repay me? By attacking me on my own show? Trevor's disappointment was clear. His tone softened, but his words were firm. Kelly, do you hear yourself right now? You questioned my legitimacy as an American commentator. You accused me of playing the victim card. You said I was overly sensitive. And now you're claiming that I'm attacking you? Kelly's voice rose defensively. You are attacking me! You're trying to make me look like some kind of racist or bigot when all I did was express an opinion about comedy. All you did? Trevor's voice was filled with disbelief. Kelly, you didn't just express an opinion about comedy. You used my immigrant status to dismiss my perspective. That's not an opinion. That's prejudice. The word hit Kelly like a slap. Her face flushed red and her voice shook with fury. How dare you? How dare you come on my show and call me prejudiced? I have friends from all over the world. I've supported immigrants. I've never been anything but inclusive. Trevor's tone remained steady. Having friends from all over the world doesn't mean you can't hold prejudiced views. And supporting immigrants in general doesn't mean you can't dismiss one immigrant's voice when it challenges you. Kelly shot up from her chair, matching Trevor's posture. I am not prejudiced and I resent the implication. Then explain to me, Trevor said, stepping closer, why my being born in South Africa was relevant to our discussion about comedy. Why did you bring up my nationality when we were talking about political humor? Kelly opened her mouth to respond but couldn't find the words. The silence stretched as the tension thickened. I was just pointing out that we have different perspectives, she finally muttered weakly. Based on what? Trevor pressed. Based on the fact that I'm an immigrant? Because that's literally what you said. You said I made millions making jokes about America while being from another country. You made my birthplace the issue. Not my experiences, not my background, but the fact that I wasn't born here. Kelly's shoulders sank as the weight of his words sank in. I didn't mean it that way, she whispered. It doesn't matter what you meant, Trevor said, his tone softening slightly. It matters what you said and how you said it. What you implied is that my perspective on American society is less valid because I'm an immigrant. The studio felt heavier now, the lights harsh against the silence. Kelly glanced around helplessly, searching for support, but no one met her eyes. She was alone in this moment. I think we should end this interview, she said quietly. Trevor nodded. I think you're right. He calmly removed his microphone, the sound echoing in the tense room. Trevor, wait, Kelly said suddenly, her tone desperate. Maybe we can work this out. Trevor looked at her. Disappointment etched across his face. Kelly, the time to work this out was when I first explained why political comedy matters. When I told you about my experiences. When I tried to show you that comedy has always been political. But instead of listening, you doubled down. Instead of understanding, you attacked my legitimacy. I'm sorry if I offended you, Kelly said, but even her apology felt hollow. Trevor shook his head slowly. You're not sorry for what you said. You're sorry for the consequences. There's a difference. He placed the microphone on his chair, adjusted his jacket, and turned toward the edge of the stage. The crew avoided eye contact. The air was thick with discomfort. This isn't how I wanted this to end, Kelly said, her voice small. Trevor paused and looked back at her one last time. Kelly, this ended the moment you decided my birthplace was more important than my message. It ended when you saw me as a foreigner making jokes about your country instead of a fellow comedian trying to make sense of the world. With that, Trevor Noah walked off the set of the Kelly Clarkson Show, leaving behind a stunned audience, a shaken host, and one of the most uncomfortable moments in daytime television history. The cameras kept rolling as Kelly stood alone, the silence around her almost deafening. The weight of her words and their implications finally began to sink in. What had started as a lighthearted debate about comedy had turned into a raw confrontation about identity, prejudice, and belonging. It was a painful reminder of how quickly respect can unravel when deep-seated assumptions come to light, and how easily a simple opinion can reveal something much more profound.